Chapter 23. Perimeter sweeps complete. 2 sentries neutralized on the north side. Mikhail's voice was clipped, professional, and only a slight tension betrayed his concern. The sound was intimate in Isabella's ear, a lifeline in the gathering darkness. Nikolai reports 4 more at the main entrance. Thermal imaging shows the strongest concentration of heat. Signatures in the main filtration building. Isabella keyed her subvocal mic, the sensation of speaking without sound still strange against her throat, like swallowing words before they could be born. I'm in the main chamber. The metallic and sharp taste of adrenaline coated her tongue. Static crackled in her ear, a harsh electronic sound that scratched against her nerves. Then Mikhail's voice came through, distorted but clear enough. We're in position outside. Remember, I want you out of there if you sense anything. Isabella's footsteps echoed across the concrete floor of the water treatment plant as she sprinted between the massive filtration tanks, each sound amplified in the cavernous space like gunshots in a cathedral. Moonlight sliced through broken skylights in jagged silver beams, creating treacherous pools of light she had to avoid. A snarl echoed from somewhere in the darkness ahead, inhuman and guttural, raising every primitive alarm her body possessed. She pressed herself against the cold metal of a rusted pipe, heart hammering as she tried to pinpoint the direction of the sound. The stench of rust, stagnant water, and decaying organic matter filled her nostrils. Metallic, earthy, and faintly putrid. Beneath it lurked something else. A musky animal scent that didn't belong in an industrial setting. Despite the humidity in the air, her skin prickled with goosebumps, dampening her silk blouse against her back. The bitter herbal paste Katerina had applied to her skin made her nose itch and left a metallic taste in her mouth that coated her tongue like old pennies. The earpiece Katerina had given her emitted a soft click, followed by Mikhail's voice, so clear he could have stood beside her. Movement on your 6. Mikhail's voice crackled through her earpiece, sharp with urgency. 3 hostiles incoming fast. Get to cover now. Isabella dove behind a crumbling cement pillar as heavy footsteps pounded across the concrete behind her, musty water soaking through the knees of her black tactical pants with a cold, insistent pressure. Her hair was pulled back tightly, face smudged with dirt to reduce reflectivity. She keyed her subvocal mic, the sensation of speaking without sound still strange against her throat, like swallowing words before they could be born. I can hear them searching, getting close to the main chamber. The taste of adrenaline, metallic and sharp, coated her tongue. Static crackled in her ear, a harsh electronic sound that scratched against her nerves. Then Mikhail's voice came through, distorted but clear enough. We're moving in. I want you out of there if you sense anything at all. That wasn't the plan, Isabella replied, her voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at her insides like a hungry animal. She brushed a strand of hair from her face, feeling its dampness from the oppressive moisture in the air. I need to draw him out. The plan didn't account for how much Mikhail stopped short, and she could almost see him clenching his jaw, the muscle jumping beneath tanned skin, holding back words he wasn't ready to say. Just be careful. Isabella stepped onto a metal catwalk, wincing at the groan of protesting metal beneath her weight. A sound that seemed to reverberate through the vast emptiness surrounding her. Below, massive empty treatment tanks gaped like open mouths, their edges crusted with mineral deposits that gleamed dully in the patchy light. The smell changed here, deeper, more fetid, with hints of chemical residue that burned slightly in her throat when she breathed too deeply. Decades-old machinery loomed in the shadows, its silhouettes resembling crouching predators, rusted gears and pipes, twisted into unnatural shapes by time and abandonment. She identified possible escape routes, defensive positions, and places an ambush might originate. The same skills that had served her in courtrooms now deployed in a life-or-death chess match. Her earpiece crackled again, like crumpling paper. "Isabella!" Mikhail's voice had dropped to an intimate tone that still sent shivers down her spine and made her skin tingle with remembered touches. "Our scouts report movement on the north side. Viktor's men might be—" The transmission cut out abruptly with a sharp burst of static that made her wince. "Mikhail?" she whispered, pressing the device deeper into her ear, the plastic edge digging uncomfortably into tender skin. "Mikhail, do you copy?" Only static answered her. A hollow, empty sound that mimed the vast, abandoned space around her. Isabella drew the gun with silver rounds, flicking off the safety with practiced precision. The weight of the metal was reassuring in her hand, cool against her palm despite the humid air. Her heart hammered against her ribs, the sound of rushing blood filling her ears. She inhaled deeply, tasting the musty air, and scanned the darkness. The sudden silence felt calculated, as if the very air was listening. She slowed her breathing, focusing on the sound of air entering and leaving her lungs. "The infamous prosecutor," a voice called from above, making her pivot sharply, shoes scraping against metal. The voice was honey-smooth, yet cold, like velvet-wrapped ice. "The one who thinks she can catch monsters." She couldn't pinpoint the source. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, bouncing off concrete walls and metal pipes, playing tricks with her perception. But something about its cultured tone, the slight accent that hinted at European origins, old-world aristocracy, preserved in modern cadence, sent a chill down her spine like cold fingers tracing her vertebrae. She'd never heard Viktor Aldrich speak before, but she knew instinctively this was him. "Where's Damon?" she demanded, her voice echoing back to her from multiple directions, the concrete chamber distorting her words. "Let him go. Your quarrel isn't with him." A dark chuckle reverberated through the chamber, vibrating the air around her. "But it is with you, Miss Santos. And my dear nephew. How convenient that you both want the boy." Isabella edged toward a concrete pillar, seeking cover. The rough surface scraped against her shoulder as she pressed against it. Tiny particles of cement dust tickling her nostrils. Her fingers tightened around the grip of her gun, the textured surface pressing patterns into her skin. "Damon has nothing to do with this. This is between you, me, and Mikhail." "Yes," the voice purred closer now, a silken rumble that seemed to pour from the shadows themselves. "My treacherous nephew, the one who stole my birthright, who turned my pack against me, who thinks humans and werewolves can coexist as equals." The last word dripped with contempt, spoken with the same tone bigots used when discussing integration, his disdain hissing through the darkness. A sound, barely perceptible, a scrape of what might have been claws against metal somewhere to her left, made Isabella whirl around, sending her hair flying across her face, temporarily blinding her. Nothing. But her skin prickled, with the certainty of being watched, tiny hairs on end all along her arms. She caught another whiff of that musky animal smell, stronger now, with undertones of something metallic, like blood, but earthier. "You've killed innocent people," she said, projecting her voice while continuing to scan the shadows. She deliberately kept her tone level, the same approach she'd used with countless murderers in interrogation rooms. "You've broken your laws. The pack turned against you because you betrayed them first." A low growl emanated from the darkness to her left. Not quite human, not fully animal. The sound vibrated in her chest like distant thunder, raising the fine hairs on her arms. "Laws!" Viktor spat, his refined accent momentarily slipping to reveal something ancient and feral beneath, like silk tearing to reveal rawhide. "Our only laws are survival, strength, dominance. My nephew has made you forget that we are predators, Miss Santos. We are not meant to hide in shadows, begging for scraps of territory. We have this city by its jugular." Isabella spotted movement on the upper level, a silhouette passing through early morning moonlight, a momentary interruption of silver radiance, followed by the soft sound of controlled breathing. She aimed her gun but stopped when the figure vanished, leaving only shifting shadows and the pounding of her heart. Sweat trickled between her shoulder blades despite the chill in the air, the salty moisture itching as it traced a path down her spine. "Is that why you've been killing humans?" Isabella asked, inching toward a rusted ladder that led to the upper catwalk. The metal rungs felt rough beneath her fingertips, flakes of rust coming away on her skin like dried blood. "To start a conflict with humans?" "To remind everyone of the natural order," Viktor replied. His voice had shifted, coming from a different direction, playing a deadly game of auditory hide-and-seek. The sound bounced off metal tanks and concrete walls, creating a disorienting echo chamber. "Humans fear what they don't understand. Fear keeps you in line. My nephew thinks peaceful coexistence is possible. I'm simply proving him wrong." Isabella reached the ladder and tested it with one hand. It seemed sturdy enough, though it creaked protestingly under her touch. The cool metal against her palm grounded her, a physical reality in a situation that still sometimes felt like a nightmare. She inhaled deeply, tasting dust and age on her tongue. "By framing Mikhail for murder," she said, carefully ascending the ladder. The metal rungs bit into her palms, and her shoes slipped slightly on surfaces worn smooth by years of industrial use. "By corrupting city officials, by destroying the peace built over generations." "Peace is stagnation," Viktor snarled, something inhuman creeping into his voice. A rumbling undercurrent like stones grinding together beneath velvet. "Wolves aren't meant to be domesticated." Isabella reached the upper catwalk, gun raised, feeling exposed in the intermittent moonlight that painted her in silver and shadow. The walkway extended in both directions, connecting platforms and control rooms. Broken glass crunched beneath her boots. A tactical disadvantage she noted automatically, wincing at the sharp sounds that seemed to broadcast her position. The air felt thinner up here, though that animal musk lingered, stronger now. "Where's Damon?" she demanded again, her persistence breaking through the fear. Laughter echoed through the warehouse and then faded into silence, leaving only the sound of running water. Isabella did her best to hold perfectly still and listen for any clue of Viktor's location. Then, a scuffling sound came from her right. Soft footfalls, fabric brushing against metal. Isabella swung toward it, finger tensing on the trigger. the textured metal warming beneath her touch. Her breath caught in her throat, holding the air hostage in her lungs. "Isabella!" Mikhail's voice reached her an instant before she saw him, emerging from a shadowed doorway 20 feet away. His clothes were torn, face smeared with dirt and what looked like blood, dark stains that glistened wetly in the moonlight. The familiar sharp angles of his features, the piercing grey-blue eyes that had looked into hers with such intensity just hours before. A sight that should have brought relief, but raised every alarm bell in her mind, setting off a cacophony of internal warnings. "Mikhail!" she gasped, not lowering her gun, keeping the barrel pointed squarely at his chest. "What happened to the comms? Where's the rest of the pack?" He approached slowly, hands raised in a placating gesture that cast elongated shadows on the wall behind him. His movements had that fluid grace she'd come to associate with him, the predatory elegance that never quite disappeared, even in his most human moments. Like water flowing over stone, effortless and hypnotic. "Viktor's men ambushed them. I barely got away. We need to leave, now." His voice carried the same authoritative tone he used when issuing orders to the pack. Still, something in the cadence was off, imperceptibly wrong in a way her subconscious registered before her conscious mind could name it. Like hearing a familiar song played in a slightly different key. Isabella's finger remained on the trigger, tension building in the tendons of her hand. "Where's Damon?" "I haven't found him yet," Mikhail said, coming closer. Moonlight caught the planes of his face, highlighting cheekbones and casting his eyes into shadow. "But this is a trap, Isabella. We need to get you out of here before he or his mercenaries take you too." Something felt wrong, off in a way Isabella couldn't immediately identify. Mikhail looked exactly as she'd last seen him. The same tactical pants and grey Henley, the same faint scent of his cologne, sandalwood and something uniquely his, wafted toward her on the humid air. "How did you get in?" she asked, not moving. Her instincts for inconsistent testimony flared like a beacon in fog. "Service tunnel on the east side," he replied smoothly, without hesitation. A bead of what looked like sweat, or blood, traced a path down his temple, catching the light. "Isabella, please. Every second we stay here puts you in more danger." He was only 10 feet away now, close enough that she could see his eyes. But there was no reflection of moonlight in them. They were flat somehow, like painted glass, rather than the living, shifting ocean depths she had come to know so intimately. Isabella's earpiece suddenly crackled to life with a burst of static that made her wince, the harsh sound like sandpaper against her eardrums. "Bella!" Mikhail's voice, frantic and broken by interference, cutting through with desperate clarity. "Not me. It's Viktor. He can... appearances." Her blood turned to ice, a physical sensation of cold washing through her veins despite the warm, humid air. She raised her gun higher, aiming directly at the man before her, muscles tensing in preparation for whatever came next. "Don't come any closer." The Mikhail in front of her frowned, the expression a perfect mirror of the one she'd seen countless times when he was puzzling through a problem. Brows drawing together, creating that small vertical line between them. "Isabella, what are you doing?" "It's me." "No," she said, her voice hardening, the same tone she used when confronting a witness caught in a lie, calm but unyielding as granite. "No, it's not." The Mikhail before her tilted his head, expression darkening in a way that was almost right, but subtly wrong, like an actor who had studied his subject well but missed the nuances. The movement was too smooth and controlled, lacking the unconscious animal quality that always underlay Mikhail's gestures. "Who are you talking to?" "Isabella, you're confused. Viktor has found a way to project my voice. It's one of his tricks." "Stay back," Isabella ordered, circling to maintain distance. Her shoes scraped against the metal catwalk, the sound unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Her mind raced, analyzing every detail of the man before her. The stance was Mikhail's, the clothing identical to the small tear on the left sleeve. Even the small scar above his right eyebrow was perfectly replicated. But something about the eyes, something essential was missing. Like looking at a masterful painting instead of a living being. The imposter took another step forward, metal creaking beneath his weight, and something shifted in his eyes. A flash of something ancient and calculating that had never existed in Mikhail's gaze. A cold intelligence that observed her like a specimen under glass. "You know it's me. You can feel it." The door at the far end of the catwalk burst open with a reverberating clang of metal against concrete. And another Mikhail appeared, breathing hard, chest heaving as if he'd been running for miles. His clothes were torn and bloodied, dirt smudged across his face, hair disheveled by wind and combat. But his eyes were wild with an emotion Isabella immediately recognized. Not just concern, but the specific, fierce protectiveness she'd come to associate with him. Blue irises rimmed with a supernatural glow that emerged when his control slipped. "Isabella!" She whipped her head between two identical men down to the smallest detail. Both wore expressions of desperate concern. Both stood with the same slight forward lean that was so characteristically Mikhail. One was pristine, despite claimed combat. The other, visibly battle-worn. The air between them seemed to vibrate with tension, raising the tiny hairs on her arms and the back of her neck. "Don't listen to him," the first Mikhail said urgently, his voice dropping to that intimate pitch he used when alone, smooth as aged whiskey. "Viktor can create perfect illusions, even mimic my voice, my movements." "Don't trust him," the second Mikhail countered, staying where he was, respecting her unspoken boundary. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. That unconscious gesture of restraint she'd noticed whenever he fought his more primal instincts. Knuckles whitening, then relaxing in a rhythm as predictable as tides. A smear of blood on his forearm was flaking away, dark against his tanned skin. "Isabella, remember what I told you at the safe house? About my scar?" "The first," Mikhail scoffed. The sound too polished, too perfect, like crystal without flaws. Any shapeshifter worth his salt can access memories during transformation. He's been watching us for weeks. He knows things only I should know. That's his power. Isabella's hand trembled slightly as she kept her gun moving between them, the weight becoming noticeable after being held extended for so long. Sweat beaded on her upper lip, salty when she unconsciously licked it away. "Both of you, stay exactly where you are." Her mind clicked into high gear, weighing evidence, searching for the inconsistency that would reveal the truth, neural pathways firing like lightning in storm clouds. The physical details matched exactly. Both knew intimate information. One came through the door. One appeared from the shadows. One spoke with flawless precision, one with raw emotion. "Isabella!" the second Mikhail said softly, his voice catching slightly on her name, the way it did when he was worried. A subtle hitch that she'd never commented on, but had noticed countless times. When I first saw you at the gala. You were wearing a blue dress that made your eyes look like midnight. You watched me from behind a column, pretending to sip champagne you hadn't touched. You thought I didn't notice, but I could feel you when you entered the room. Despite hundreds of people talking, your heartbeat was the only sound I could hear. The first Mikhail stepped closer, his shoes making no sound against the glass-strewn catwalk. Movement preternaturally quiet. And I told you that if you were investigating me, you should ask your questions directly. We stood on the terrace, and I warned you to trust no one in Atlanta after dark. You shivered, not from cold, but from how I looked at you. The air between us felt electric. Isabella felt dizzy, knowing the importance of getting this identification correct. The gun felt heavier in her hand, and her muscles began to burn to keep it raised and steady. The first time we kissed, the second Mikhail continued, his voice dropping to that rough whisper that had made her stomach clench with desire. The sound intimate despite the cavernous space around them. You tasted like coffee and cinnamon. You pulled away first and then apologized, as if you'd done something wrong. I wanted to tell you then that nothing with you could ever feel wrong, that all my centuries of existence suddenly made sense. The first, Mikhail's eyes flashed with what looked like genuine hurt, a shadow passing over his perfect features. You told me later you were afraid, not of me, but of what you felt, that it was the first time since your mother's death, that you'd let yourself be vulnerable. That night you cried in your sleep, and I held you until the nightmares passed. I counted your eyelashes while you slept. 57 on the right, 59 on the left. Isabella's breath caught. Both knew the most intimate details of their relationship, moments no one else could know. The gun wavered slightly in her grip, fatigue beginning to set in. Her legal training had prepared her to spot deception, but never against an opponent who could become the person they were impersonating. "He's good," the first Mikhail said, a hint of grudging admiration in his voice, lips curving in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Viktor always was. But ask yourself, Isabella, why hasn't he attacked? The real Viktor wouldn't waste time talking. He's stalling. I'm not attacking, because I don't want to risk hitting you in the crossfire, the second Mikhail countered, taking a cautious step forward. The catwalk groaned beneath his weight, the sound echoing in the vast space. Isabella, trust your instincts. You know me. Not just facts about me. You know me. Isabella looked between them, searching for some tell, some flaw in the deception. Both stood before her, identical in every physical aspect, bathed alternately in moonlight and shadow as clouds scudded across the night sky above the broken skylights. Her training had taught her to search for evidence, for objective truth. But this situation defied those parameters, slipping between the rigid structures of logic she'd built her career upon. Trust your instincts, the second Mikhail had said. The exact words her mother had whispered to her the night before she was killed. Her warm hands cupping Isabella's face. The scent of her perfume, jasmine and vanilla, surrounding them like a protective bubble. Words Isabella had spent years burying beneath logic, evidence and procedure, entombing them alongside her mother's memory. Tell me something, she demanded of both of them, squaring her shoulders as she did before delivering a closing argument, feeling her spine straighten as if steel had replaced bone. Something about how you feel. Not facts, not memories. How do you feel right now, in this moment? The first Mikhail spoke immediately, words flowing with practiced eloquence, each syllable precisely formed. I am terrified not for myself, but for you. Every second you stand here is another second Viktor has to position his men. We're both exposed, and I can't bear the thought of failing to protect you. When I saw you in danger, I felt like my heart was being torn from my chest. The words were perfect, exactly what Mikhail might say. But something about the delivery felt rehearsed, like testimony prepared in advance. It lacked the halting quality Mikhail always had when discussing emotions. As if feelings were a language he'd learned late in life and still struggled to speak fluently. The second Mikhail didn't speak right away. He closed his eyes briefly, a furrow appearing between his brows. That expression of concentration she'd seen when he struggled to articulate emotions. His wolf nature experienced differently than his human side, as if translating from one language to another in his head. When he looked at her again, something raw and unguarded filled his expression, stripping away centuries of careful control. I'm afraid, he said, his voice rougher and less polished than the first, the words coming in uneven bursts. I'm afraid you won't choose me. That, after everything, trust is still too much to ask. His jaw tightened, that muscle jumping the way it did when he held back stronger emotion. A physical tell she found inexplicably endearing. And he faltered, hands spreading in that helpless gesture she'd only seen when he was truly vulnerable. Palms up, as if offering her his uncertainty. I'm angry at myself for putting you in this position, for dragging you into my world, for needing you so much that I'd risk your life rather than face this without you. Isabella felt something shift inside her, like tumblers falling into place in a lock. The second, Mikhail hesitated and struggled with his words, his forehead creasing with effort. The first had answered smoothly, perfectly, too perfectly. She'd spent enough time with Mikhail to know that emotional admissions never came easily to him, each extracted at a cost, dragged from depths he rarely allowed anyone to see. But she needed to be sure. Her legal training demanded certainty beyond a reasonable doubt, evidence that would stand up to the harshest scrutiny. Both of you, she said, stepping back to keep them both in view. The metal catwalk was cold through the thin soles of her shoes. I have one question that only the real Mikhail can answer correctly. She took a deep breath, steeling herself, tasting the metallic tang of fear on her tongue. Do you love me? The first Mikhail's expression softened immediately, his features arranging themselves into a perfect mask of tender affection, too smooth a transition, like an actor hitting his mark. Of course I love you, Isabella. I've loved you since the moment I saw you. You're everything to me. I would cross oceans of time to find you again. The words were beautiful, poetic, unlike Mikhail's usual terse communication. The real Mikhail, who had lived for centuries as a predator, who approached emotions like unexploded ordnance, who struggled to translate his wolf's instinctual bonds into human language. The second Mikhail's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the skin, that physical tell she knew so well. His eyes flickered with pain, blue depths, clouding like a storm-tossed sea. He started, then stopped, that familiar hesitation, when words failed him, his hands clenching into fists. His shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath that seemed to cost him. I don't know if what I feel is love. I've never felt it before. It's bigger than that word, darker, more terrifying. His voice dropped to that intimate rumble that resonated in her chest, bypassing her ears to speak directly to her bones. But if you're asking if I would tear the world apart to keep you safe, if I would give up everything I've built to see you smile, if I can't imagine a future without you in it. He swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing, a very human gesture from a being who was far more. Then yes, yes I do. Isabella's heart pounded against her ribs, filling her ears like distant drums. Clarity washed over her in a cool wave, sweeping away doubt and confusion. The first answer was what anyone would want to hear: romantic, certain, perfect. The second was messy, complicated, and real. Beyond the words, it was the physical language, the restrained tension, the unconscious gestures, the painful honesty that confirmed what her instincts had whispered from the beginning. She lowered her gun and stepped toward the second Mikhail, her decision crystallizing into certainty. No! The first one shouted, his handsome face contorting with sudden rage that transformed his features into something inhuman. The mask of perfection cracked, revealing something ancient and terrible beneath. You stupid, blind human! The facade cracked, literally, as Viktor's features began bleeding through Mikhail's, like paint running in rain, colors blurring and reforming. His elegant bone structure sharpened, eyes shifting from blue to crimson in a heartbeat, teeth elongating into fangs as his cultured composure fractured. The smell in the air changed, that animal musk growing stronger, tinged with something acrid, like rage given scent. You could have walked out of here, he snarled, body convulsing as he partially shifted, bones cracking audibly, sinews reforming beneath his skin with sickening fluidity. The sound of his transformation was wet and organic, like meat being torn from bone. But now neither of you will. He lunged for her throat, claws extended for a killing blow, the metallic reek of bloodlust filling the air around him.